Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on three things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Hey everyone, Bryan Whittington with this episode of the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. We're going international today. We have Tim, that's not his real name. He'll have to share his real name in a little bit. So Tim Cakir comes originally from Turkey, hanging out in Spain, been to the US, all over the place. So we should have some fun on this one. Today's topic is going to be around innovative ways to structure compensation to really align focus on right activities. And clue, it ain't commission. So this should be a curious one, a little Daniel Pink Drive-esque. So with that said, welcome to the show, Tim.
Hi, Bryan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And now I'm kind of curious. I mean, let's jump right into this. Question number one is, hey, why in the world should we listen to you on this? What makes you such an expert on this?
Well, yeah, I've developed, I think as a marketing manager, I've developed about 3 or 4 teams of marketing up to about 17 people. As a COO, I've developed about 50 people teams multiple times. As a growth consultant, I've helped about 20 plus startups now in bringing their team together, making sure that they're ready to scale, getting the right talent at the right time at the right place. So that's why.
Nice. Okay. Well, cool. So let's go into this. I mean, let's start it off at, because you're that growth consultant, you're looking at this from a founder perspective. So let's maybe talk about, I'm the founder. I have this great idea. Things are really starting to take off. First hire. How should I consider compensation whenever I'm at that point? I'm not likely profitable yet. Maybe I am, but it's a little bit challenging still. Talk to us. How should we look at compensation at that point? It will be question number one. Okay.
I mean, so that's very interesting because obviously we've heard a lot about, you have to believe in the mission, vision, values, and then, and then hopefully the money will come kind of thing sometimes. But that's exactly what we shouldn't do. We need to have some kind of good plan of compensation anyways. So what I mean by here is, even if you're just a brand new startup and you have an idea, you're a founder, if you're bootstrapping it, you can, according to that, give some equity, obviously, to your first founding members. But I think that if you're going for some investment money, you should definitely have a clear compensation package. Why am I saying this, Bryan? Is because I've heard so many times saying that the founders should not also take salaries for themselves when they get investment. And I think that's absolutely BS. Because if you're not taking the compensation that you need as a founder and you're going to be obsessed about your company, then you're still going to have in the back of your mind about the compensation. We still need some sort of money or compensation to live, right? So I definitely want to say a no to that when investors says, hey, you as the founder, the first 18 months, you should not be taking any kind of compensation or salary. I think that we should forget about that.
Okay. Now, what I suppose, and what would you suppose that they do instead?
Well, to be honest with you, there's a lot of money out there. If you have a really good, if you have a good solution to a problem that exists, there's a lot of money that can be invested. There's a lot of money turning, I don't know, in the US, obviously as well, but in Europe right now, we have a lot of VC money, a lot of government funds for research and development. There's a lot of money out there to put into things that we're building, right? So if you're building something that you really believe in and that has a solution to a problem, please do go get some money. And, make sure that you don't have to think about the money, because you have to be thinking about the problem and the solution, right? And that's going to be your obsession. And, you should never have in the back of your mind, oh, okay, what are we getting paid? Who are we paying? How are we paying? That should not be one of your thoughts in the back of your mind, because that will slow you down in your performance.
Now, do you have any type of recommendation or methodologies that you might use whenever you're that founder, no employees yet, what they should be paying themselves, how that would structure so they can drive the right activities?
Absolutely. I mean, if you had a full-time job before, obviously you're not going to have the same salary as a full-time job when you're the founder in the beginning. So 30-40% less, that's completely acceptable, and I'm going to say it very straightforward. Look at your expenses, look at what you're paying rent or mortgage, and look at what's going to make you okay livable. You're not going to save money in that time. Trust me, you're not going to buy a new house, you know, but at least you have to have enough to live and not to think about, you know, about buying food or paying your bills. Right. So if you can think about it like that, you know, be straightforward and don't ask for more in the beginning. And if you can scale that company to on 18 months to bring around a investment, there you can start getting that salary that you wanted.
Yeah. Now, there's a gentleman by the name of Mike Michalowicz, and I think that's the right proper name, called Profit First. And it gives an alternative there for some cash flow management, taking a certain percentage and doing that. And to your point, Tim, I can't remember the study it was, but there was a study that showed that if you are struggling with income, right? Mm-hmm. If you're worried about income, you will not think clearly at all. There was a 40-point spread on this study that they did from whenever these people were in abject poverty. They have this intense work period of the harvest season. And then once they're done, 80% of their income from the year was right then. Their IQ score went up by 40 points, which is a massive amount because they weren't worrying about money. So that is such a critical key point. Now, you did say that you shouldn't ask for more than what you think you could use. I'm kind of curious on that because I've heard others say, no, you should ask for as much as possible every single round. So I'm kind of curious as to your thought process there.
Well, when it's your company, you know, it's asking for more. I don't think it's fair, right? Because if you do really bring, you know, I will always touch back on this problem solution, because if you're really building something that has means to it, money will come. Money won't be the problem. But if you're obsessed with the money now, oh, let me take more, let me take more, let me take more, that kind of also makes me believe that maybe you don't trust in the future of your company that is going to make XYZ amount of money where you can start paying yourself quite well, right? And why am I saying this? This is why I'm saying still take 60%, 70% of what your salary should be, right? Because you're founding a company. And you, as you mentioned, right, if we have it in the back of our minds, we're not going to perform as well. Like I'm repeating that's for sure. You know, stress, anxiety, and all that will come to play. But what I mean about that, it's every round, if you're asking more as founder, right, really it doesn't show that you trust your own solution. Right. And if you do trust your solution, I mentioned again, money comes. But when we have a vision, a mission, you know, and some real values and people follow us, we really build proper companies. We build proper solutions to existing problems that are important. And if we do that, then we don't even have to talk about if money is coming as a salary or compensation or not, or equity.
Yeah. Well, now, you said whenever you're hiring that first person, you might want to consider equity. So what would that structure look like? How would we know if the person's the right person to give equity? And then if I give equity, is that like a marriage, right? So how long am I tied to this person? So let's hit the first one. When would I know, hey, should I give equity or not?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, luckily, it's not exactly like a marriage, because when you're married, you're married. But when you make a contract, you could say that you have a cliff period, right, for the equity. So at least a year, and then on 4 years, you're building towards your equity and so on. But if you're bringing a co-founder, let's say, right, and if you're going to give them 15% of the company, right, maybe they're bringing something else to the table. Maybe you already have an MVP, a minimum viable product, and maybe you've already have some target customers and you've validated the product market fit. Then you are a bit stronger, right? So maybe a co-founder that comes at 15%, they might bring some investment. Maybe they will bring some cash, right? Or maybe they will bring a portfolio of clients, or maybe they have past experience, or maybe, you know, there are so many maybes here that they can bring. But if you are both equals and you're just starting in the beginning and you just have an idea, I'm sorry, but just an idea is not worth money anymore. Right? It's actually the solution, the product market fit that is worth money, right? Ideas are great, but if we can't execute them, they are worth nothing, right? So what I mean by that, it's you have to look at case by case. But if it's a co-founder, like you said, a marriage, right? Make sure that you have some clear contract there. with the cliff period. Make sure what divorce looks like. And if we're divorcing, who's taking the child, who's taking the kids, who's taking the technology. Like the examples of that would be the technology, could be, the intellectual property and so on. So those have to be very, very clear in the beginning. If you have that, I think you won't have drama later on.
Yeah.
Like in any marriage, you'll always have drama, right? So
yeah, precisely. And that's the thing. Whenever you're partnered up with somebody, it is just like a marriage. I mean, it is a real challenge. You have to, visions have to align, work efforts, and because one person is probably going to be very technical, the other person is maybe more business minded, maybe that outside sales minded. The two can have massive conflicts. So you want to really work that out, make sure that you get those right roles and responsibilities and what success looks like, so we can hold one another accountable. Now, so talking about going into that equity, are there particular positions that might warrant handing off equity other than more so than others?
I'm not sure I get exactly what the question.
Yeah. So for example, if I hire a CFO, or if I hire a programmer or a developer or something like that, are there some positions that, definitely this one warrants equity versus, or don't even think about it, right? We're not going to give equity to a customer service person.
Yeah, and thank you so much for clearing that out. To be honest with you, it changes by industry. If you're going to be product focused and you're 100% product focused company, then your CPO, your chief product officer, should have equity, and they're going to be super important. If you're a financial technology company and you need somebody who has a background in finance and in technology behind finance, it could be a CFO. Or it could be even a CTO that knew about finance before. So again, I think that it's very, very specific to the use case and the industry, but you have to look at what you need. What is the core skills that you need in the get-go, in the beginning, and those are the people that should have the equity, right? So let's give it a very quick example again. It's if you're building a marketplace and your product is going to be huge, it's very important. I bet you're going to want a CPO, right? Somebody that's going to see the product, that's going to oversee the whole product from the beginning till merger and acquisition, maybe, right? So then you need a CPO, and maybe you don't need a CFO right in the beginning. You can have a fractional CFO, right? But if you're you are a technology for investment banking, right? You're definitely going to need a CFO, and you want to give them some equity, right? So you have to really think about the use case and stop a second. There is no standard in this, so you can make your own thoughts about it, but as a founder, this is one of your most important things, is to make these decisions in the beginning, and they are what will make or break the company most of the time. So take your time, flirt before you even date, and then start dating, and when you're dating, make sure that you have enough dates before that marriage as well.
Yeah. Well, now, okay, so we're now founder. We've identified the position that we're looking to hire for first. We decide a little bit about the needs there. What's those success metrics look like? How do I go about then identifying how to compensate this person to drive the activities that we want?
Absolutely. Well, I think that the compensation here has to come also looking at the industry, what's happening around you. You can't be far off from other companies, from other startups, especially, and especially if we're talking technology, right? I think that now we're much higher salaries, much higher compensation in the tech businesses and tech companies around the world. So make sure that you're benchmarking yourself against other companies that were in a similar stage as you 18 months ago or now, right? And again, it's be very open and speak to one another. I think that having a clear conversation about this is very important, because then both parties will agree, and then in the near future you won't have any problems. And I'm saying this because right now there's a big topic on LinkedIn, right? Should salaries be open, right? That we see it for any jobs, and every kind of job description would say, competitive salaries. If you're so competitive, why you don't even tell us the range, right? So when you think competitive salary, you're like, oh, okay, they're gonna give me this. You go there, you start speaking to them. You're at the fifth interview, and they tell you something that is half of what you were expecting, right? That is very, very sad, and that's gonna dishearten you, and then you're gonna go back to zero, right? So those are very important topics and discussions to have in the beginning, Brian. And I will repeat this because people don't do this. People are not very communicative in the beginning, because as a founder, we have a kind of a business plan. We've done a financial forecast. We've done a P&L. We know exactly what we want to give. And then suddenly somebody could come along that we've never expected, that is an amazing talent. You might have to bump up that 20%. That's okay. If you know that their skills they're going to bring to the table gives value and you need that value, please do it.
Yeah. Now, do you have any rules of thumb or any ways to back into it? Because whenever you look at compensation, there's market rate, right? So how competitive are you against others? There also goes to return on investment. There's some, I guess not return on investment, that might be a poor use of words, but return on that person's effort, right? Because if you're paying X salary or X compensation, you're going to expect Y times whatever as a return. And I know there's a drastic range on what each employee can bring revenue wise. Do you have any rules of thumb or schools of thought of how we should know how much, if I hire this person, how much additional revenue they should bring to the table, or I'll alleviate so we can bring extra revenue to the table?
I definitely don't look at it from a revenue perspective. I see where you're going, Brian, but I think that it's very important not to think about revenue per employee, in my opinion, but it's value per employee, right?
Okay.
So if we're missing those skill sets, and the skill sets that they are product, UX, UI, and all that, and we're missing that, the value of that is much higher than me bringing somebody commercial, right? So I will value that a bit more, and I could pay even more, right? So again, it's very, very specific to the use case, but I think a bit of a rule of thumb, it's definitely benchmark yourself, as we said, but have a very clear journey on why you would, not a journey, sorry, but a framework in your mind on why we would pay XYZ more to this person than the other person, right? You have to make sure that you can clarify that with yourself first and with the person that you're hiring, and making sure that the rest of your team would be comfortable with that as well. Because if they learn after that, and sometimes people share information, and you don't want anybody to be upset. And when I'm saying that, I'm just looking at some examples from the European side here. Is we do have a couple of startups here who are paying double the amount on salaries of other tech companies, because they have big VCs behind them. Does that make them very competitive? Yes, they can hire much more talent much quicker. But does that mean that they're going to keep that talent a year and a half later? No. Right? So we have to be careful about that. And why do I say that? It's because we're like, oh, okay, because most of the time when you throw a big salary in front of you, not as a co-founding team or a founding team or a co-founder, but more as somebody who needs some money and needs a job, we love the big amounts of salaries, right? But then we get into this company and we don't believe in their mission, vision, values, and so on. A year and a half later, we will change jobs, and that will cost the company more because the training period, you understanding the product, and so on and going. So throwing a big bunch of money is not what I think is important on compensation. Before we look at compensation, we have to find the people who believes in what we're doing, right? If you believe, if we have the same mission, vision, values in life, right, you will follow me even if you have a little bit less salary or compensation than another company, right? Yeah. So that's very important that we find the right people that has similar kind of aspirations in life, if that makes sense.
It does. And so one of the things that we do as a company is hiring salespeople, right? And they tend to look great on paper, interview well, and then you hire them and they don't sell a thing. So what we tend to do is ensure that there's four things that come to mind, or four things that come to fruition. And I think this is what you're talking about, Tim. One is that person's skill set. Two, their passion, and ensure that it aligns with the company's mission. And lastly, that culture is alignment for all of them. And if we can get those four things to come to fruition, it's not so much about the compensation at that point, because they're living out their passions, their dreams, that what fulfills them. So it's not necessarily a compensation piece, as long as, back to the very beginning of this, as long as we're doing what we need to do in covering their day in, day out expenses. If they're worried about money, they're not going to be worried about their job as much. They're going to be in survival mode, and they're not going to be able to perform as well. So wholly agree with that. And so now if we look at that, okay, we bring the person on because we've considered that compensation to drive activities. Tie those two together. How do you see, or how are you suggesting that we tie compensation to those activities for these innovative companies?
I'm maybe not gonna answer it as straight as I should, but I want to add something here because of this, because you mentioned that you guys help hire salespeople and so on, right? So I've been in so many companies that were very sales led. And we had, in the beginning as a startup, you have 30 employees and more than half are salespeople. And if you compensate them a commission structure, right, on what you sell and so on, they will sell a deal for whatever, right? And they will, I'm sorry, but they will lie as well. They say, oh yeah, we're going to have that feature soon. That's going to happen. Don't worry about it.
It's on the roadmap.
Yeah, it's on the roadmap. Just buy it now, please, kind of thing, right? Because they want to be on that leaderboard that we have on the sales screen, right? They want that compensation. They want maybe the dinner with the sales director and so on. That could happen. These things, right? But what happens then? It starts creating this competitiveness that is unhealthy competitiveness between their team members, right? And selling the products because they just have to sell it. And not really looking at the value and what they can bring as value to the client. So what I started to do in a couple of these companies as a consultant is I would put a team together, and the team would be like a sub team, right? So it would be a sales guy, it would be account manager, it would be possibly an SDR, right? And a customer support. You'd make them sit together almost, and they will share the accounts, right? So whatever account comes, they share this 50 accounts or 100 accounts, whatever, right? According to your product. And you would structure the commission based or the compensation according to that. So then suddenly they can't just bring a client and be like, oh, here's a client, here's the hot potato, as we call it. Here's a hot potato, pass it on to customer support. And customer support is like, I'm sorry, they should have never promised you that because we can't do that, or this doesn't work, or so on. We don't have that. Instead of that, suddenly you have a team that work together, right? So making sure that that client that is incoming is also staying, and retention, right? And retention is super key. Retention, as they say, is the new acquisition sometimes.
Yeah.
So going back to that, sorry, Brian, it's really, think about the activities that makes that client from the first touch point to hopefully not the last touch point, but an ongoing touch points with you, right? And that you have the team to ensure that that's successful, right? And that's how I would look at the activities. If you're looking at more on the commercial team, right? So marketing, sales, customer support, I think they're more commercial. If you're looking at the tech team and the product team, it's much different. But I have a solution for that in my mind, and I've tried it a few times with certain companies. It works. It doesn't work for everybody. But it's more on the creative side of things. It's on the experimentation. What do you bring to the table? Which ideas do you bring to the table? Weekly, monthly, quarterly, right? Do you contribute more than your day-to-day job of coding? Do you bring something else? Yes, then you should be also compensated for that.
Interesting. Okay, so there's a lot there. So let's unpack this a little bit. I'm going to go on the opposite end. Okay, I'm going to say, hey, I'm the sales leadership. So let's take this around that team idea that you had from a sales perspective. I guess before I go into that, let me give some clarity. I would hope that everybody on this that's listening to this or watching this would not do the stereotypical sales things, because this is a professional position that we have, and it's built on trust. And if we are over promising and under delivering, then yeah, you might get the sale, but you're a schmuck and you should never have done that. So don't. And if that's you, please get out of sales. Right. So yeah, right. That's first off. So we're going to sell this properly because we've identified a problem, address that the solution that we have is going to fix that problem, and we sell it properly, doing proper sales things. So whatever that looks like. So if I'm not inbound lead conversion, me as a sales leader, I'm going to say, wait a second, if I sell in team compensation, I now lose my hunter. My hunter is only going to hunt if I compensate that hunter for hunting. And so speak to that sales leader. How would this team approach work whenever I'm doing outbound demand generation and I need a hunter?
That's a great question. I mean, when you look at inbound, anyways, I think that the inbound most of the time, in my opinion, should be more for self-service things, right? Because they'll come, they'll serve themselves, they'll get the product, they'll watch a demo, and so on. But if we're looking at enterprise clients, that's where you want to build your sales. Your hunter is not going to find those small to medium businesses that makes you okay. They're going for those big brands. They're going for those big logos that is going to help your portfolio, get bigger. So I think that if you're mixing the inbound, the outbound, and the quality of the leads are the same, there's a problem already, right? I'm not going to put 3-4 people team to get things that could be people just look at a couple of blog posts and they're just like, hey, I'd love to buy your platform. It's people who already are using another platform, but we believe that we're better than them, right? And so we're going to pitch to them and we're going to show them, we're going to hunt them down, we're going to understand what their problem is. Maybe they already have a solution for it, but possibly they're going to have, around the edges on the makeup of the product, there's going to be some problems that hopefully your product is better at, right? And that's what you're going to sell it for. So if you start separating that a little bit, I think you're starting to create a better world for your marketing and for your sales. Because, how many times also this happens? If you bring an MQL, right, marketing qualified lead, and you give it to sales, and it becomes a sales SQL, right, because of certain activity, they book a meeting and so on. How many times marketing and salespeople not hate each other? That's this very strong word, but actually blame each other for the quality of the lead, right? They'll say, "Oh, you don't know how to close a deal." No, but you brought me really bad leads, right? So I think that there should be a differentiation of marketing personas and your hunting sales SDR personas. You want a bigger picture there, and marketing is more a machine, is a more automation.
Okay, so tying back to the topic here, then how would we differentiate, or what's your suggestion on differentiating the compensation there? Because what I'd also like to do is then tie into what you suggested for that coder, that more that person that's thinking through it, that innovative thinker. They're bringing a problem. And so I've taken this from the 1 Minute Manager, which is the best line I think I've heard, and I love it. They say, if you bring me a problem without a solution, or at least a couple of ideas, you're complaining, and there's zero complaining allowed. So we really want to take those people that are invested, that are identifying problems and bringing potential solutions to the table. And I think that's what you're saying, is figure out how to better compensate those problem solvers. So help me out in tying that activity with that innovation, because that's some complexity there.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity in there. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about some of the use case that I had, and I've had many arguments with my CEO. Back then when I was a COO, I've had many arguments with my clients even, right? That they were very sales focused, and they were very commission based sales focused. They're like, okay, you have a base salary, and if you sell this much, you're gonna have a great salary. That makes it super aggressive, and there's gonna be a problem. You're definitely siloing the sales team right away there, because they can get this much salary when they have this salary. Marketing, you have this much salary and you stay there, right, most of the time. And that is a big problem. So I think that this is why OKRs are getting more popular lately. I mean, they're not new, and you can actually compensate through objectives and key results. And then you're suddenly compensating a team or a sub team, a group of people together. I think that's much healthier. But I also found out in the OKRs, the one problem is that it's very always positive thinking. We're always thinking about the objectives and the key results, but we don't think about the problems, the things that that is blocking, the blockers, right? So I'm kind of preparing a framework called the GCO framework, the goals, challenges, and opportunities framework, and hopefully that's exactly for a better world of compensation, more creative workforce that work together. Why I'm saying this is that suddenly you have your goals, which is your OKR section, your objectives and key results section, but you have your challenges. Your challenges could be any kind of problem that is happening inside the company. It could be a customer support agent saying, hey, I've been fixing 150 times the same thing over the last week. Why are we not fixing this, right? And that's a challenge. That's an issue. That's a problem. You can identify that. You've identified that. You can escalate it. You can make it big, and the whole company can know about that. And then everybody in the company can start bringing opportunities to the table. So ideas on how to fix that, right? And if that opportunity works, you fix that 150 problem that the customer support agent was facing. Possibly you had other ones that were facing, and now they have more time on doing better things for the customer instead of fixing those problems. So if we start compensation around who's fixing problems, who is outspoken, in which team, how are they dealing with these customers, are they responsible, or, as we said, of a bunch of customers together, and they make sure, if we start thinking more collectively on compensation as well, I think we're going to create better workplaces.
So give me that again. It was GC what?
The GCO. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I have a few pages already written, but I want to write a book about this.
Yeah, that's great. And just for submission for you, check out this right here. So it's the idea driven organization by Alan Robinson.
Yeah.
Because you piqued my attention here, because this is one of the biggest challenges that we find, because I think the new superstar in whatever position is going to be that person who is innovative, and innovative not necessarily in technology, but innovative in how do we identify problems, fix them quickly at the lowest level, so we can differentiate ourselves. Because it seems like anybody can figure out technology and code and build that up. Now, I don't want to diminish that, but it's still important. But it's not like the old days that you're going to be so drastically different that everything is commoditized. And it seems to me that the only differentiator moving in the future is your team, your people, and how quickly you're solving problems. And that's going to be the competitive differentiator in everything. Because I can copy your technology, I can copy your pricing, I can copy your marketing messaging, I can copy everything, but I can't copy your people and how your speed of innovation. So that's my soapbox. I'd be curious as to your feedback on that.
I'd love to add something. It's incredible what you said. Yeah, absolutely. Because your talent is what's going to make your company or break your company, right? That talent is very important. And you mentioned code and so on. We have no code now. Yeah. People are building things with 3 clicks, and you have the same of Airbnb almost, right? But maybe you're not going to have the same vision. You're not going to have the same problem solving, as you mentioned, and how fast you're going to market and so on. But how many also big enterprise companies are making a lot of money, and suddenly the smaller startup comes and eats that company away, right? Because they're faster, they're more on minimum viable, right? so they're looking at how minimum things they can do to show the value, right? So that they can surpass that company. So in that, again, I think that why I'm doing the GCO is about all that collective intelligence, right? And we come collectively to be more intelligent together, right? But when we hire amazing people and the compensation is super high, and we take them, we put them in a box, and we literally leave them there. And we're like, okay, here's your task. This is what you do. And the person does it, and he's like, oh, I was hired in a great job. In the beginning, very excited. 6 months down the line, they're like, oh, okay, I'm not bringing much to the table. I'm just doing my day-to-day, right? A year and a half later, that person leaves the company, and then you're like, oh yeah, but you seemed happy. Yes, I am happy, but I'm not contributing more than that day-to-day. I have ideas. I have things to say. I've seen these problems, right? So how can we create a more collective space to bring that intelligence together is actually one of my focus the last year, and is going to be my focus for next year as well. So how do we drive growth through collective intelligence is my topic at the moment.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so how would you suggest tying compensation to that? I mean, you could. I'm just thinking of. I've been on a reading binge here lately. Just got done with one of Eric Ries's books. It's I think he had it out about 2011, or no, I'm sorry, 2014, called The Leader's Guide. And he talks about the innovative accounting. So have you figured that innovative accounting guide to align with this, or can you unpack that a touch?
Yeah, it's. I think it's first of all, it's very difficult because we're changing a culture. We're changing what we've designed in the industrial age, right? So we're changing how we work, and how we work is very difficult to change. So I'm still haven't 100% figured it out because I'm still testing things myself. But it's absolutely first of all we need to celebrate. And I saw one of my clients do this really well. Celebrate the failure of the month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they had a poster, and they would put the failure of the month. They would describe it, why it failed, what was the hypothesis, and so on. At the end of every month, they would get a bottle of champagne for everybody, and for every department, and they would celebrate it, right? That started to create a better culture already, right? And then anybody who would bring more of these ideas that even if failed or won, right, experiments that actually we put into play, right, would get compensated, or they would have a certain amount a month, right, of bringing something to the table. So Google is doing this actually, right? Google is doing this by giving, was it 20-25% of their time of every employee to new projects, building cool things, right? So they're doing it maybe not monetary, but they're doing it with time where you're learning, right? So that's very important as well. So if collectively I can also bring you more intelligence to yourself because you are excited about this topic and you want to learn more, that is a compensation, right? So because you're helping me increase my skills, right? You're making me a better person professionally, right? And that what it's gonna make is that even if I left your company, I'm gonna get a better job, right? So, and this goes back a little bit, right? The CFO and the CEO are talking, and the CEO says, "Hey, we need to give this much on educational budget," and the CFO says, "Yeah, but what if they leave the company? What if they take all this and they leave the company?" And the CEO says, "What if they stay?
Yeah, it's even
What if we
worse.
don't give them this education with this growth and they stay, right?" And I'm repeating this lately because we have to start thinking about like this. We can't be like, "Oh, okay, I got this person, let me keep." We all move around companies now, right? So there is no more CVs almost in lately in the tech companies where somebody worked 5 years, 10 years. No, because you come, you solve a problem, right? And you want to go solve other problems, right? So you will switch around companies. That's okay. So what I'm trying to say here is I haven't figured out 100% what it is yet, but it's a lot on experimentation, on ideation, and you can make a pool of people who brings ideas. It could be departmental, but then it creates silos. So I do really recommend of mixing people together when you do these exercises of brainstorming, ideation sessions, and so on, and see what are the experiments that come from these different teams, and see which experiments you're going to implement. Even if it's a failure, it could be a big failure, but if you implemented it, that means you believed in something as well. There was a hypothesis that was very interesting, and from every failure we learn something. So we're gonna fail a bit less next time because we've learned, or we're gonna fail completely something different. But every failure comes with its learnings.
Yeah, so I'm just jotting down some notes here. What I think is, yeah, absolutely do some type of an award for the biggest failure, and that biggest failure is from trying something new. Let's face it. It's not because, hey, you're the biggest failure because you didn't execute. Way to go, right? That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, hey, you tried hard, right? You tried something that you were swinging for the fences and you fell and whacked your face and you got a busted up nose now. So that's what we're celebrating, is somebody that reached, maybe overreached, but we're going to get some lessons learned off of that. So maybe some type of an award for that biggest failure. And then I just jotted down this, maybe some type of compensation for X amount of dollars for every idea generated, right? Mm-hmm. with a proposed solution or a couple of solutions. So maybe there's some type of, hey, every idea that you bring to the table, it's X amount of dollars, much like an SDR, BDR. Every time that you set a meeting, you're going to get X dollars. Every time one goes to pipeline, you're going to get X dollars, right? So something along those lines for ideas, then for problems solved. And then maybe it's some type of a percentage, and I don't know if we'd want to do this, but some type of a percentage of savings or the improvement. Because if you as a company and or organization are going to win from this, why wouldn't you pay that person? Yep. Right? Let's not be greedy. Let's give back to the person who had the idea. And guess what? They're going to love you, likely stick around more and do this more often, because there's not too many people that know how to problem solve like we're talking about.
Absolutely. And you know, when we say ideas and then suddenly everybody's like, oh, I have lots of ideas where I work, but it's not just about I have an idea. It's about presenting that idea, right? As you mentioned, to find a solution to that problem that exists. So I really recommend, you know, building a template of a one pager or somehow to be able to propose these ideas, right?
Right.
And I don't think it should be per proposed idea, but it should be per ranked idea. So then we bring some ranking methodologies, right? Some prioritization kind of frameworks like ICE, RICE, you know, which are very famous prioritization frameworks. If anybody doesn't know, they can just Google it. And basically, if we score these ideas and they come in a, let's say, on the 20%, top 25% of ideas that are generated, then we should compensate maybe, you know. Why? Because we could just have any idea for whatever reasons. But if we collectively are scoring the ideas, and even if the idea is going to be a failure later on, we know that that idea was something that really somebody put thoughts into it, and somebody was creative. Somebody was able to think outside that box, right? Because we're all being put in this box. So if you can start thinking outside that box, I think that's where we should compensate.
Yeah, well, and I'll throw this one out at you. I like this. It's kind of fun, just kind of brainstorming through this. But the way that we have it on our team, and this has been one of my biggest failures as a leader, is I've not been able to get people to bring the ideas, bring the problems as quickly as I'd like. We've been working so hard at trying to instill this into the organization. And so one thing that we've done is we have, you know, just a spreadsheet that's shared Google Doc or shared, you know, SharePoint doc. And it's what's the problem? What's the potential root cause of that problem? Because we have to find out what the likely root cause is of that problem. What's your suggested action items or fixes? And it might be as simple as push this button or do this. And they have autonomy. So right now it's at $500, right? Because we're still a little bit of a startup. If it's less than $500, they have the autonomy to go and fix it. It's an instant yes, because it costs more than that to sit around and have a meeting about this stupid $500 fix. Just try it, and hopefully that's going to work. So that's the way that we've put that into play. So there's no, just go and do it. If it's less than $500, call me up. I'll give you the credit card and we'll push it through. So that's our attempt at least starting down this path. So I don't know your thoughts or maybe some suggestions off of that approach.
I think, Brian, that's an incredible start, and I don't think you have failed as a leader, because you see you're testing and you're still in the way of figuring out what's going to really work for your organization. And I think that's a great start. A spreadsheet, it could be a poster on the wall. I don't care where it is. It's that you're trying, right? You're trying to create a better workplace and to tap into that collective intelligence, right? Because that's why we collectively get together, because we're more intelligent together, and that's how humans we've evolved, because, you know, more brains together. So I love how you've defined that. You know, I do it quite similar, but it's more like I have this one page of template. I just opened it up here as we're speaking. You know, it's the purpose. Start with why, right? Why are you bringing this idea? Where is the problem? What's the purpose? What's the solution, kind of thing? Give me some observation, some support material, how you've observed that problem and how you're bringing a solution to that, right? You know, your hypothesis, as we mentioned, you know, how is it a testable solution, right? Or give us an explanation. And then you have to also tell us, how do we determine success? How do you think that if we implement this, you're going to say, okay, this was successful or not, right? But also, please start thinking about the resources required. I'm not saying that everybody will know exactly which resources are required to put the idea into play, but have a bit of a thought. And it's really a fun place to start thinking about other departments. And this is where we're breaking down silos. We're starting to know each other's work. We're creating a better workplace, better colleague friendship, and so on. You know, but then also tell us the priority and what's the impact that you see this is going to happen. And this is why after you can bring a ranking methodology to see what people says about the impact of this idea might be, you know, and make sure that if you have any questions, any risks, any uncertainty, that is clear, that you're asking your directors or your colleagues or your executives, or you're the executive, then you ask your team members, right? Again, here it's a communication. And I think the one page or the spreadsheet and so on is to be able to communicate our ideas, because we all have ideas. Yes, that's great, but we're not all very good at communicating them. And this is where I think we need to work on how to communicate ideas so that we collectively understand how you thought about it in your mind, and how many times people say, oh yeah, here's my idea. You get it? And it's like, no, I can't see behind your brain. I can't really see how you think about this. So please open up a document, a one page, explain me exactly what's in your brain. And then we collectively can rank it. We can understand each other, and then we can grow together. And that's exactly, I think that what you're doing as well, Bryan. So I think that we can do it in many, many ways. Let's just do it.
Yeah, and listen, now's the time. The communication has never been easier between Slack and Teams and Zoom and all this stuff. I mean, there's shared documents, Google Docs on your SharePoint. There are so many ways that we are now coming together, and we can all see. And I think the biggest pushback, that if you try to start to implement these ideas in your organization, likely your biggest pushback is going to be from the middle management, and maybe even at senior leadership. So senior leadership will worry about losing control. Middle management will will be concerned about not being celebrated, not having the idea, right? They feel as though that they should have the idea. And I would throw out for your consideration is, you become a better leader the less you're needed. If you're not needed, you're going to be desperately wanted because you're going to be so valuable. And that's when you know that you're a great leader. That's when you know you're a great manager, is your team doesn't need you anymore because you've trained them up so well. And now they're going to be outperforming ideations all over the place. I mean, the possibilities here are just limitless. So I really challenge you to think through this, figure out how to bring this into your organization. So, son of a gun, I can't believe how much time has gone past here, Tim. So let's wind it down. I guess the question would be this: what's the biggest challenge or mistake that you've seen in people bringing these ideas and trying to drive compensation to these activities? What's been the biggest miss that you've seen?
I think the biggest mistake, or it's not even a mistake because they don't do it, is to clearly communicate it, to document it, and to make sure that there is a central location for all this information at all times. I think that's the biggest problem, and I think this is why many big startups now, like Notion, who's been valued at, I don't know, 7 billion or something like that. They were just a note-taking tool, but they're starting to become the central of information. So knowledge management, I think it's the biggest problem that I see in most companies.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to throw this out here to my listening audience. Get on me to get Dave Nelson onto this podcast about that knowledge transfer, knowledge documentation. So I will continue to pursue him, and I'm going to send him this podcast so he hears me calling him out to come on. So got it. Okay. Agree with that completely. And then how about a business hack that you might have for, and I'll go to your sweet spot for scaling a business. What's the one thing in order to scale, if there's only one thing that an organization should do or a leader should do, what's that one thing?
Yeah, it's not to get data drawn, but be more data informed and not data driven. That means that, choose your 3 to 5 important metrics per department, per team, or per area, whatever you want to call it, and make sure that the rest they're just supportive metrics and they're not your most important metrics, because we become very obsessed about all the little data points and we cannot move everything. But if we have 3 to 5 metrics that are important with a 1 North Star, and we work towards that, we're going to grow, we're going to scale, and then the rest will come together. So I'm a very big believer in data informed now instead of data driven, because I think that the last 10-15 years we've been data obsessed. Yeah. And that brought us to be data drawn. So suddenly we're drowning in data, right? So minimize it, simplify it would be one of my biggest tips.
Yeah, I love that 3 to 5 most critically important. And then that's also allows you to read the story. If you're not hitting one metric, then it's probably you missed a leading indicator to that lagging indicator, and that lagging indicator might be the leading indicator to the next. So if you can read that story, you can coach, mentor, and train, identify problems for this ideation and get it solved, for goodness sakes. Good stuff there. Okay. I'm sorry, did you have another piece on that?
No, that's it. That's okay. I'm just even taking some notes because I love how you put it there as well. Yeah, the lagging metrics as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, and now resources that you might recommend, books, podcasts, guides that you might suggest that we can study on this a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm very obsessed at the moment. If you're in execution management, executive teams, and so on first round review. I think first round review is great because they're very clear frameworks and processes and so on. If you want to educate yourself further and you want to do quick courses on learning very important topics in business, I think Section 4 by Scott Galloway. And Prof G himself, I mean, he's got a podcast, and he's an outspoken person, Scott Galloway, and you can also follow him on LinkedIn. I really love following whatever he shares as well. So in Section 4, you can get some really quick 2-week kind of courses, cohort programs that really educate you in a very, very specific niche topic inside business and inside businesses, and I think that's super valuable. Yeah,
I've not heard of him, so I'll have to check him out. Thank you so much for that.
Legend guy. I hope that he would listen to this podcast and
we'll send it to him. We'll send him. Maybe he can join us. Now, what do you see future trends? We've talked about this a little bit, but I'm kind of curious. What do you see coming down the pike? You're like, run away, or this is going to be so cool. What future trends do you see?
I think the future trends that are very interesting that I read again about it today or yesterday was how Airbnb is bringing the new features as well for nomad lifestyle, right? People not just renting Airbnbs for holidays, but they're renting Airbnbs to live there and work there, right? And then move around. So I think that there is a massive move on that. And I had this hashtag, and we were going to build something cool with a friend, and I saw people are doing it now, so I kind of stopped it, or maybe I should do it. Workation, right? Yeah. It's how can you work while you're almost on a holiday, right? While traveling the world. I think that's gonna be huge, and especially for the US, because you guys don't take holidays.
You've talked to my wife.
You guys are obsessed with working, which is great, but how can we make sure that you can travel with your family, with your wife and family, while still being able to work, attend the important meetings, but still travel in the world and not being stuck in one place? I think there's going to be a lot of money put into this. There is already, and COVID, obviously, pandemic really helped it scale in a massive format where everybody's like, you know what, I'm not going back to an office. Yeah. I don't need to be in an office. I need a meeting room once a week with my team in a city. Okay, cool. Yeah. That's, I think, the massive trend that there is inside businesses. And I think that we need to adapt the hybrid solutions and not one or the other, because I see some job descriptions out there. They're like, it has to be in the office. Okay, well, somebody else is going to give freedom, and people are going to go for the freedom company and not for the company that tells me, no, you have to commute 2 hours inside a city that is super busy with traffic like LA or something like that. Yeah. And commute 2 hours back. We want to be with our families. So the trend is, how can we win more quality time with our families, with our friends and so on, but we still perform and still bring value to our careers and to our work?
Yeah, precisely. It's good luck trying to get people back into the office. I mean, there's too much freedom, especially we've figured it out, right? That genie's out of the bottle. So, all right. Hey, Tim, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate it. Who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should people reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone. So there's a couple of different type of people that could reach out to me. One is founders that are just newly founding their companies and they need some help on tech stack, on tooling, on frameworks, on how to make sure that they have the great OKR methodologies or GCO methodologies, right? How can they build that? And the other section of people that should contact me usually is I come into companies a lot around the round A, round B investment, and I help them build their dashboards, create that story as you mentioned with the metrics and so on, so that they look better to investors and so on. So anybody that is in one of those times in their lives, they should definitely contact me. How they can contact me is very simple. My LinkedIn, If you put Tim Cakir, Timcakir, you'll find me. And thanks, Bryan, for trying to say Cakir, but I go with Cakir because I know if not, people can't say it. On my website, timcakir.com, I have also a newsletter there where I share some crazy thoughts of mine, a little bit of personal, a little bit of professional, a mix of all my learnings, basically. And I'm here to help anybody. I coach a lot of people. I teach as well in 2 universities master's program because I really am trying to give back from my obsession of learning. I learned so much that I want to try to also help others learn from these topics that I've learned myself, and the mistakes that I'm doing. I do mistakes every day still, so I'd love to share how I did it, why I did it, and what I've learned from it.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not mistakes, they're lessons learned, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everyone. So really good stuff here, gang. This is a deep, complicated subject with a lot of stuff in here. So do me a favor, go back, listen to this again, pull out of it what you can do. Just pick one thing that you can take and apply and make application of this. This is good conversation. So thanks again, Tim. I really appreciate it. Hey, until next time, everyone, Bryan Whittington signing off with this episode of the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. See ya.
Thank you.